everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are going to be talking about rating books. A totally different video today. I am behind on some content because of the fact that we moved and everything, and I'm sure you're tired of hearing me say we moved, but we're getting back on track. I was gonna do a new releases video for this quarter, even though we are already in July. It will be coming shortly. I have it all planned out, but Elliot decided that she wanted to go down for a nap late today, and I have no idea when she's gonna wake up. So basically, she went down for a nap late, I had lunch late, everything is just late, and I was scrolling through threads. Mostly I go on Instagram. That's my preferred social media outside of BookTube, which I guess is not, for me personally, doesn't feel as much social media-y. So I was on Instagram, saw something on Threads, bumped over to Threads, and I feel like a lot of the times nowadays we just have a lot of very weird differing opinions on book stuff on Threads. Like, I see the most interesting takes on there right now, and I decided to do like a book talk sort of video where we just sort of ramble around talking, and this is just like how my brain works. So yes, we will have a lot of rambling about rating books, because lately a lot of people have been talking about rating books, and some of this is authors, some of this is book reviewers, readers, however you want to say that, but it's been a lot of stuff lately about like what you can review or what you can't review, and so I just wanted to like sort of sit and give you my thoughts. So like, one of the things that I have seen is talking about arcs and when you should post arcs, and I think there is a difference a little bit between like when you get an arc from an author, especially like an indie author, that kind of thing, or are on a street team for an author specifically, versus like getting it on NetGalley. Like, yes, you are not going to get all of your arcs back if you are an author. I was seeing a lot of people posting about this, getting only maybe 10% return rate on reviews. And I think part of it is because you are sending those arcs out. E-arcs especially are a very common thing nowadays. You're not really having to pay shipping for a physical arc that way. And reading is, yeah, some people do this as a job, but in general I feel like it's very much an entertainment and enjoyment sort of thing. This is a hobby for me, one that I absolutely love and love sharing with everybody, but I'm not getting paid to do it. So I am definitely not somebody who could ever be swayed by the fact that an author sent me a book or somebody sent me an ebook for review. Like, I'm 100% going to review and rate it whatever I think it's going to be. If I get it through NetGalley, I am more likely to not necessarily be harsh, but I'm not going to consider my review of a DNF or a low rating something that is going to be like a negative thing. I do sometimes feel a little bit bad if it is like an author reached out to me and wanted to send me an arc. I only accept ones that I know are in my wheelhouse, in the genres and tropes that I like, because of that fact. But I'm never not going to review the book or give you guys my full feelings on a book because it was an arc and an author sent it to me. But there were posts about people sending out arcs and books and telling people that it needs to have a high rating. You're not allowed to rate it low, which is like so bad. Or I've seen ones talking about like, if you are gonna rate it low, like, don't do it after a certain amount of time. And I have done this in the past where if I know it's an indie author that I got a book for, like specifically I did this when I was on a street team for an author. I read over 20 books that this author put out and was reviewing backlist books. I really enjoyed a lot of the stuff that this author put out. One of the books that I was sent to read, I hated. Absolutely hated. It felt like there was no editing, it felt like there was no characterization. It was very different genre-wise from some of the other stuff that I had read from this author before. Like, I had been reading sci-fi and fantasy and paranormal, and this one was a pure like contemporary sort of story, but like it was just not good in my opinion either. I literally reached out to them just in the fact that like, hey, this story is not for me. That's literally all I said. I said, this is something that is not for me personally. It's not the type of genre I wanted to read. It's not working for me. Because I was on the street team, I reached out in that way to let them know, hey, I'm not going to post a review for a while, because usually that's what they want. If they want you to reach out and let them know if you have a review or not, because that was the other thing that people were complaining about, is like how often are authors allowed to bug the ARC reviewers for the review, and it's like, you're not supposed to do that. Again, it is a little different if you're on a street team potentially, but in general, authors should not be doing that. But we had gotten like a notification or something like that, an email saying, hey, this book is going to be coming out, everybody needs to have their reviews up. So it wasn't like an individual reach out, but because of that, I reached back out saying this was not for me. I was not going to post a review until later. I was going to give them at least 2, 3, 4 weeks to put that book out into the world, get it to the hands of the people that wanted it. And after being on the street team for this author for at least a year or more, because of the fact that I read at least like 20 books from them, I was promptly kicked out and never given a reason as to why. I know why. It was because of that, but like literally I was ghosted. So, I mean, that kind of stuff can leave a bad taste in your mouth, but like I will never not give you my pure thoughts on an ARC. So like again, authors are going to send out ARCs. You're not going to get them all back. Don't bug the readers for them, but also don't be bugging them about why their review is low or why they didn't like your book. Like again, reviews are for readers, not for authors. But that was a big thing going around recently. And another one was talking about DNFs. Do you rate DNFs? Should you rate DNFs? And it's like, yeah, I'm going to. If I didn't like a book, I usually will tell you, especially again here on YouTube and BookTube or in my reviews on Goodreads or Storygraph, I will say why I'm DNFing something. Most of the time it's because the book was not for me, not something I wanted, not something I liked. When I do that, I don't give it a star rating on Goodreads or Storygraph because I know this was a me thing, not a book thing. If I'm DNFing because the writing style is bad or the characters are bad or there's problematic elements, yes, I have in the past given those books a rating, and usually it's a 1 star because that's like, if I'm DNFing it for a reason other than it's boring or not for me, I think there's something bad about it. And I will say that too. Again, you can DNF a book at any page number, any percent that you want, and you can rate it if you want. Some people were like, oh, only do it if you DNF at 50% or more. No, if I DNF at 5 pages, I'm gonna have a review somewhere and I'm gonna rate it, and I'm gonna tell you why. Even if it's no stars and it's just because this was not for me. Like, I'm going to say whether or not it was for me, whether it was boring, what, like there's a reason people DNF. And I do think sometimes even those DNF reviews can tell other people, other readers, whether they're going to actually like it or not. And yeah, sometimes I DNF things and it's problematic, and I think people need to know based on content warnings or things like that too. Like, this is a very legitimate thing. Again, stay out of readers' spaces. If you're an author, you do not need to know why somebody DNF'd your book. And again, this is all to say as well, if you're a reader, don't write a review and tag the author or send it to the author in their email. Just don't do that. That's a thing. Well, another thing that came up today is people talking about don't rate a book based on editing. And I think potentially some people are reading it as like, if you see a typo in a book, don't give it a bad review. Sure. All books, even traditionally published ones, are going to have typos in there. I know I read some Stephen King last year because I was trying to do a Stephen King project that I do want to get back into, and I just haven't, where I reread it for like the 10th or 11th time. Like, I've read it so many times. Well, I reread it, and there's a part in there that talks about Beverly Marsh's stepfather, but what they actually mean is father. And this book has been out since the 70s. I have read it so many times, and this is the first time I caught personally that something in it was wrong, like factually wrong. And it's mostly because of editing and typos and that kind of thing. Like, something snuck past these thousands of people that, you know, went through the writing process, editing process, reading process, and like, I just barely caught it. You know what I mean? So like, things like that happen. But if you're not getting your book edited and like people can read it and really see that this story could have good potential, but it has plot holes, or something is lacking, or the characterization, or like it goes from point A to point B very, very quickly and you're not getting enough information that way. Editing does a lot of that. So that's why a lot of authors will rewrite their book a lot, or like edit their book and take those pieces and make sure that everything flows from point A to point B, or get beta readers, or you have actual editors for traditionally published books, or even indie authors should be getting an editor to double check their stuff. So this author was basically saying, do not rate a book because the editing is bad. And you should do it based on, I guess, like the potential for the story. It was a little hard to tell because basically they were agreeing with everybody that said, oh yeah, I don't, you know, review based on editing. I only review, you know, other ways or whatever. But like, I can usually tell if something feels like it needs to be edited more. Like, again, for example, a book that I hated a couple years ago was To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. This is a traditionally published author, which is part of the reason I'm mentioning it here. He is very well known. He did the Aragon series. He's a very big author, big fan base, so people might hate me for this, but this was a huge, huge adult sci-fi book that really felt a lack of editing for me. Like, it felt like because he got so famous with the Aragon series and was such a well-known author that they just sort of let him do whatever he wanted. And there was a lot of repetitiveness in characters and situations over this, like, what, 700 or 800 page book that really could have been edited down and really focused on one plot line and not having the repetitive nature of, like, every couple hundred pages our main character has to go into cryosleep and travel and wake up and figure out where she is. And then, like, it was just a lot of that kind of thing. Like, it felt like nobody else besides him decided to read it and try to edit down his words. Like, it was, you can feel that. And I am somebody who rates based on vibes, based on feelings. And that's what some people were trying to argue for, if you're not looking at editing, is that these people are probably rating on the vibes of the story, how the characters make them feel, how the plot line is going. And that makes sense. However, if there is a distinct lack of editing, I do think that can take you out of a story, because even if, and I did not think the characters in that story were good either, but even if I was liking a certain character, that repetitive nature of the not having editing in a, like, 700 or 800 page book, I really felt that, and that took me out of the story every single time it happened. Like, it could have been made better. And so I do rate on vibes. However, I do think editing can make you have those vibes or not. Is the build-up working in the story? Is that going from the beginning of the story to that actual climax? Like, the editing is going to make that happen. And no, because I do take vibes as, like, one of my #1 things in a story, I don't necessarily get picky about editing. Like, I'm not somebody who's going to be tracking how everything is worded or how it is written, like the prose of it necessarily, unless it's something that I just don't like. I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly what part needed to be edited, what part needed to be rewritten. I'm not going to track that. I'm going with vibes and how the characters feel, and are there relationships that feel natural, friendships or not, you know, that kind of thing. I do think editing really counts, and I think a lot of what was coming into the comments of this section was people arguing sort of like, do we treat traditionally published authors better than indie published authors because they don't have that editor built into the publishing house? But at the same time, if this is something that you're trying to do as an author, I would assume you want your book to be the best possible, and you want to at least have somebody, even if it is just like a beta reader instead, to try and figure that out. I think editing does matter. If you are that person that wants to nitpick every single little bit of editing in the book and rate it for that, rate it for that. Because if that's taking you out of the reading experience or making it a worse reading experience, like, that's what ratings are for. It is going to be very subjective. And again, like I said, for me, I have books that I have rated 4, 4.5, 5 stars because I really did love either the plot or character or, like, the vibes of it, or a combination of all of those that I know for a fact did not have the best writing style or editing. And, like, I can tell that, but I've mentioned that in certain reviews because of the fact that I can see that. I can tell that this was a debut book by an indie author who did not really have an editor, and you can sort of see that. However, I loved this, this, and this. You know, so, like, that does play a part. I think this is all to say that, like, readers should be reviewing however works for you. All rating systems are going to be different. I know I've talked about my rating system a little bit on here, although it has been a while, but in general I do give my top 5s to ones that really have some sort of emotional connection for me, some sort of vibe that I'm just like, I can't put the book down. Sometimes I can figure out how to say that to you guys, other times I can't, but there is this feeling that I get when I know it is just like a pure 5-star, you know what I mean? I do have half stars, but like, again, 4.5 would be more of a feeling. A 4 is something that is really, really good. I think a lot of people would really enjoy. I really did enjoy it. It just doesn't have something that makes me want to give it that 5. Maybe there was something that I can concretely tell you this is the reason it was a 4 versus a 5, but something that was still really good, something that I still really wanted to read, that I did enjoy. It was just not like a brand new, like, perfect favorite. A 3 is where we actually start to get a little for me, because like I think a 4 could have some issues with it. Maybe there's small issues, or maybe there was just something that I couldn't really put my finger on, but a 3 is where I'm really mixed. Sometimes it's because I loved this but hated this, and then sometimes it's because it was just like a mediocre sort of thing for me with issues that made me lean more out of the 4 stars. You know what I mean? Like stuff that I can really concretely say that like I would never read it again. Not that it was bad, and I don't think that people should read it. Like I would still recommend a 3 to a lot of people, but like for me personally was not as good as I would have expected. A 2 is something that I actively dislike. I don't give 1 stars very often to books that I finish unless I really, really hated it or thought it was absolutely problematic. Those are usually reserved for DNFs in a way that was like, it is problematic, or there's something about it that I really did not like. Not just purely not for me, like we mentioned earlier, and I had to stop reading it, or I just did not care enough to keep reading it. Like there was something that I guess like actively turned me off. Like I did not want to read the book, so I did not finish. 2 stars are really low for me though, so a lot of my reading is pretty good, and I feel like I've gotten to the point where I can usually tell based on genre and tropes and things like that what things I'm going to enjoy or not. But all of that is to say that rating is purely for the readers. Reviews are for the readers. I do prefer when people have reviews versus just a rating, because it's easier to tell why or why not they like something or not. But again, you don't have to do that. If you're going to be rating on Goodreads or, you know, whatever you want, like a rating will suffice. But it is for the readers, and it is going to be very subjective per person. Like my 5-star could be somebody else's 4-star, and my 2-star could be somebody else's 3-star, just depending on like how they're actually using their ratings. Because I know some people, 3s are still like really bad for them, even though it is more the middle of the road. Like I said, this train of thought was going to be all over the place because that's just how I am. I feel like these book talk videos are very rambly, but that is just mostly to say that I have been on Threads every so often, and I have seen so much stuff lately about what you can and can't do to review a book. And I don't agree with so many things saying you can't review a book. Of course you can review the book. So this is just my thoughts on the different things that I have seen so far. And again, I think, like I mentioned, everything means just review the book. Just review the book, DNF the book if you want to, and you can still review it. Yeah, I think that was everything that I wanted to talk about. I've been rambling for almost 20 minutes now on here, so I think we're good. If you guys have any thoughts about this, definitely leave them down below, because I think this opens up a really good conversation. And I think that's what some people have been having on Threads, is a good conversation about this. However, a lot of them have been very, don't do this, don't do that. And I don't agree with those parts. And if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos coming out Tuesdays, Thursdays, and sometimes Saturdays. So I will see you then. Bye.